Today is Thursday, May 23rd, 2019. My name is Jeffrey Crivero, and I'm here with Connie Lester and Sandy Cawthern at the Downtown Public Library in Orlando, Florida. Ms. Cawthern, thank you for speaking with us today. Let's begin with some of your biography. If you could, please tell us a little about where you're originally from and your upbringing.
Okay. I'm originally from Worcester, Massachusetts. I'm a New England person, born and bred for 389 years. So my ancestors was a part of the decade of 1830. There were 25,000 people that came from England to Boston in that time. And so then Boston was too full. They're overcrowded, and so the places that became Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont. What you did was you went to there, you walked all over, you figured out how to get up there, and you picked out the land that you wanted, and you got it for free. So as an exhibit of colonialism, it's that sense of, I have this, and it wasn't right because it was already being occupied by other people that were still there. So that would be the beginning of my family. On both my mom and dad's side, and so it wasn't, we never talked about it at all. It's only been, I think, since Ancestry.com came out or something like that, with people would go back. Okay. So I would say that I'm a mom. I've been a single mom of 3 daughters, and now I have 5 grandchildren, 4 boys and a girl. The kind of person I am. I started taking belly dance classes when I was 61 because I wanted to see if my mind could actually make my muscles do what I wanted them to do. And it's true, it happens. Okay. So I think that would be the kind of thing, if I come up with an idea, that there's a way of checking it out, I'll just go ahead and check it out. And I consider my life to be a series of excellent adventures because my 5 strengths are adaptability, empathy, positivity, ideation, and developer, if you're aware of that. I don't know if you are. Oh, you can't answer.
No, I can't.
It's called Strengths Finder, and what it is, there's different things I champion, but what it is you find out the things that you do really, really well, that you can't help but do them well because it's so ingrained in you, and concentrate on those and develop those, because that's what you should be volunteering for. If you volunteer reluctantly for something that, like mine would be, my worst thing is I don't pay attention to detail. So if I responded to anything not paying attention to detail, I'm going to disappoint the person that has asked me to do this. So that's helped me a lot in volunteering for things and not volunteering for things. And it also gives me an insight into myself. And so actually from doing this, it was like I actually like this person. I know, and so I'm embarrassed to say that in a way, but I really think that person that's that way is pretty cool. So that's an example of how I'm going through life. The other example, and I don't care if you put these in or not, but I am not sure if there's a God, because this is what I tell to people. And I won't know until I die. So why spend a whole bunch of time trying to figure that out? And so what is it that I can do? And what I can do is I can be kind. And so that's what I do. I just be kind.
So speaking to that, can you describe how you first got involved with the First Unitarian Church of Orlando and some of the work that you did early on?
Yep. My father died when I was 48, and to honor him, I thought I would sort out my life and make it right. And so so one of the first things I did was join the church. I was going back. I was raised Episcopalian, but it was a religion that kept a lot of people out. It wasn't open, especially to people that I really liked and respected and would want to be having an experience with. And so I was thinking, well, if I went back into like Judaism, the place where that religion started, maybe that would work. However, I wandered into the Unitarian church, and in the foyer, they had all these pamphlets and everything about all the ways that you could be active in Orlando and Orange County, all the, various Sierra Club or working with the homeless, that kind of thing. And so it had what I was looking for, which I didn't have a title for at that time, but it was social justice. And that's what this congregation has a lot of. And then what I've done with it, I suppose the number one thing I've done with it is in 1989, we started becoming what's known as a welcoming congregation, which means that we are totally integrated and welcome all LGBTQAI. And that one, really, I know for sure, it took 4.5 years for it to be accomplished. And I took on just a role for myself, and not anything formal, but just kind of like as a keeper, a person to remember, where we're going, or just make sure that it didn't get lost in the way. And by the time we became a welcoming congregation, it was what I understood really was just about every single family has somebody that's gay. Just about every single family. And so for it finally to have that gay marriage would be the law of the land, I think it's because there's so many people that have in their family a gay person. There's no longer a way to make it a wedge. There's not any other way to be able to politicize it. It lost its politicizing. And that's really good.
Excellent. So can you tell us a little bit about how you first learned about the events on Election Day in Ocoee, November 2nd, 1920, and talk a little bit about what happened there.
Orlando Public Library, okay, going in on its microfiche, and also going in on newspapers. That's how we found it, sitting right here in this library.
And was it through the church that you first?
No, what happened was, after that we learned where he had been lynched and located it geographically where we thought it would probably happen. And so we decided, it was like 4 or 5 of us, that we would go over to that place and do like a little memorial and create our own immediate service as there, what the ritual or memorial would look like. And so we were talking about it, and the president of the congregation came by and said, please don't use our name. Well, what she thought was that there would be media showing up, and we would be talking, and not to say we were from the First Unitarian Church. Because in our church with the activism that we're doing, it's the part about you can speak for yourself, but you can't speak for anybody else, which I understood, but there were other people that thought that was a terrible thing to say, to us. So some people were upset about it, and some people I was disappointed, but I understood what was going on. And looking back at it, was probably a pretty good initial example, because it was so close to home. It was easy to push back against it, or not to feel like you had to understand what they were saying and validate that they had the right to think that. So.
And before we started the interview, you were telling us a little about the number of people that first were involved in the project versus where it ended up. Can you tell us a little bit about that again?
Yeah, it had to do with the various experiential exercises we're doing. I can't think of the woman's name, but she has a whole sheet about white privilege. So it would be that one where you get in line and you walk if you did this, then you get to advance 2 steps, or if this happened, you get to go back. So it would be an example of a thing like that. And so I think, looking back at it, I really do think we didn't really have the language for white privilege. Mostly it would be, and I can't remember her name, but she still to this day works on that, and she has a list of like maybe 29 or 32 instances of white privilege. So back then, there were a lot of people that were really, really upset by that. I guess it's the part about where come along and somebody goes, but I'm not a racist, you know, and so that they would drop out for that reason. Well, what I have learned about the person saying I'm not a racist, really the kind of thing I say is when you go into a black neighborhood, okay, what is your reaction and how does it feel? Or I give instances of the places where they could be scared of a black person, for them to understand that a black person could be scared of you, that you're not a racist, but what is seen is your white skin, and how you get identified is as being a racist.
So, originally you said that there was a large number of people that were involved in the July Perry getting a marker made for him, and by the end it whittled down to just a few people.
Yeah, there was no marker involved in what we were doing. We were doing all of this ad hoc on our own, not connecting with other places. I think where we got integrated into stuff was there was a website created, and we had a lot of postings and a lot of things happening to that. And so there would be queries from students from all over the United States that decided, like for their masters, they might do with the Ocoee Massacre, or for some paper, they would want to do more with the Ocoee Massacre. So we would connect with them, and any kinds of information that we found or anything, we just put it up on in our website, and it would be available to anybody. So it began to be used in colleges.
Could you talk a little bit about how you became involved with the Democracy Forum, about the origins of it, some of your accomplishments?
Okay. In the beginning, everything was a new thing, and we had not ever done it before, so we had a lot of happy enthusiasm for it happening. So a woman named Sherry Dupree is the woman that is responsible for the Rosewood Massacre, having the state of Florida pay the descendants of the people from the Rosewood Massacre. And so she heard about us, or we heard about her and contacted her, and she actually came down from Gainesville and came and trained us as to how we would, because what we were doing is just putting on, she said, oh, you put on a public forum. You know, it's not anything more than, it's just a public forum. It's a place of hearing and then a place of having a dialogue. And that how you behave is, you behave like, oh, well, I'm a church woman and I'm doing this and I'm really kind, and there's nobody would ever want to hate me or spit at me or do those kind of things, to be, you know, clueless, I guess, basically be clueless that there could be any kind of a negative response, was her way of saying this is really how you do it. So looking for a place to have it, and we ended up on Borders bookstore that was in the West Oaks Mall, and that's the closest mall to Ocoee. We thought that was a pretty good thing. And so we visited with her to find out, yeah, can we do this? And she said, yeah. She was actually the outlook person for ways of being able to be in community. So it was perfect for us to go there and to present our forum. Well, the mayor, when we put out the notice, and the mayor of Ocoee went to the library and tried to intimidate this very, very pregnant woman to not let our group come there. And she said, I'm from California. And this is my job, this is what I do. So that was that. So then, the mayor and one of the, I guess we'd be like the historian of the city, they came to the forum, and then there were a couple of other people that came to the forum, and it turned out the other people that came to the forum were the descendants of Samuel Salisbury, who was the head perpetrator, white, of the massacre. And they came to protect his image and to encourage us to have empathy for, and he had been an officer in the First World War, to have empathy for him and not, you know, debase him or something like that. And they were, and the grandson was probably about 50, I think, and was very disruptive, okay? And it was fine for the people that were there because we just behaved the way that we did, and a way of just being able to hold our ground and put out what the facts were that we had found and have this talk back. And so they were basically helpless because they weren't able to recruit anybody that was even in the listening to what was going on to respond to them. They just didn't appeal to them anymore. So for me also what that was is this wheel or this arc of whatever it is about moving forward was getting to the place where the white community has particular understandings and just aren't going to be able to be called into consciousness of politeness, I guess I would say. So that was a wonderful thing to know. And so that happened to really do away with an awful lot of fear about the future ones that we would hold, would there really be any pushback? And as the things that we did publicly, we really didn't have pushback. People came because they were really interested and they wanted to listen and they wanted to talk. And that was the reason why they were there.
So can you tell us a little about some of the other accomplishments maybe that the Democracy Forum had, and what ultimately happened to it? What is it?
Oh, okay. So, as I said, we put on various forums, and then it became that people were contacting us to come and put on forums. So this happened within the Orange County location. And it happened in Black communities, which was, for me personally, absolutely wonderful that it was. And we're all grassroots stuff, so our displays, the things that we were displaying on, for people to look at, were all homemade and on poster board and written in colored pencil and everything like that. But we had a lot of stuff. We had the site map of Ocoee with the lots divided off, and we were doing research on who owned these lots by going in Orange County and looking at all of their records. And we started on this map marking off the places where these people had lived, these 295 people. And we always said, well, we're gonna make a pamphlet where when you come to Ocoee as a tourist, then you can get this pamphlet and you can walk around town and stop at each one of these locations and realize it had been owned by a Black person. So we had this fantasy of doing it, but we've never actually done it. And we knew that this would be, Ocoee would just, that would be the most terrible thing to happen to them. So that was a fun thing to think about, but we really didn't get there. But what we did do is, at the end, when people were walking out, there would be newsprint on an easel, and it would say, now that you know this, what do you think Ocoee could do about this? Or so what are your suggestions for the actions that Ocoee could take? And then one of the big things that happened was at UCF, professor and a master's student decided that they would write a play about the Ocoee Massacre. And it was called The Whirlwind Passeth. And okay, I have to go back a little bit. We received a grant. And we've, for the fiscal holder of it, we used the Notre Dame Sisters of Hope Community Center, okay? Because they had another center before Hope Community Center was built, and that's where they were meeting. And because the Unitarian Church had, had kind of been scared, that we started meeting there at the Apopka Farmers Association. And that was the Sisters of Notre Dame, as I said. So we had received a grant from a foundation that run by a woman, and what she was doing is she was empowering groups in the South that were working on memorializations of hanging. You have to remind me. What was the question that you had? What other things that we accomplished?
Yes, Democracy Forum's accomplishments and what ultimately kind of became.
Oh, okay. Think back in order. So that the first one was, okay, and then we located the unmarked grave right away when we went over to Greenwood Cemetery. The person got to just open the file drawers and find out, yeah, this is where he'd be buried, because there was a small black section right in the beginning of where the initial building is when you start to walk into the cemetery. So every year on the November the 3rd we would go there, and we would have a ceremony about that. And so we did that every year, and the newspapers started to follow us. Darden Restaurants presented us with their theater in the Science Center as the place where we could put on the play. After the initial writing of the play, the two authors had a session, and it was to have a reading of what they had written, and have discussion about what works or what doesn't work, and it was done at UCF. And the mayor and the cohort for the historian were there in the audience. And as the reading of the play was going on and things were happening, they were going like, oh, this didn't happen. So when they started talking about it afterwards, they were kind of like denying what happened. So that was an interesting thing, and we knew that they were upset, but most everybody else was there because they just really wanted to know and learn. Okay, so like a couple of meetings after that, well, the play hadn't been shown, the play itself had not been developed. It was after that initial thing, and it was apparently right around Thanksgiving, because after Thanksgiving we got a letter from a UCF student that said how the people representing Ocoee said like it didn't happen, and when they went home for Thanksgiving realized that talked about it, and it was their family took place. There was part of their family that was there, white people, for that riot in Ocoee. And so that person just filled her in about, yeah, this is what happened. And so at the end of her letter, she said that the mayor and the historian, they were lying, it wasn't right. So that was, it makes us feel really good when that kind of thing happens. I mean, it's so precious, and it would be, you know, somebody, I think it was at Yale, and some, like, maybe a senior paper, writing a senior paper, contacted us. There was a woman that had come to Orlando to be with her coach while she was preparing for the Olympics. And she was a black person, and she found out about us, and so she came. She started coming to our meetings while she was down there. We went to the Orange History, and that was when it was where the Shakespeare Theater is now, because we had heard that that a master's thesis had been written, and that it was there in the museum. So we went to ask them for that, and they reluctantly gave it to us because they couldn't really say no. But at the time, they were talking about how what they were doing is there's a new museum that's going to be built, and it's going to have rooms where the local activist groups or whatever, they can do postings, they can do it their display. And we went, oh, that is so fantastic. That is absolutely wonderful. Yeah, we've got things we're going to want to do that. We want to do that. And the woman, not the head of it, but I think she was in charge of actually almost all the work. Anyway, she went, oh no, we can't do that, we can't have that, there would be a riot, there absolutely would be a riot, we cannot do that, we cannot do that, we cannot do that. And we pushed back in some kind of a way, and then it was, and the curating of these what do you say, displays of what you're going to be showing, the curating of that show, it is a very particular way of being, and it's really expensive. Okay, and so that's what we went away with. You know, we weren't ready to do it or anything, but we had put that out, and we had this response. Okay, now this is how the universe works. And so at our very next meeting, which is probably like in a 2-week time or something like that, one of the new people that came in was listening to us about what's going on, and he had introduced himself as coming in to take care of his grandmother. Okay, and so that's how he, you know, talked about himself when he came in. And so with this, he said, "Oh, I just graduated from Ohio State with a degree in museum curating." So for me, this really and truly was, you get the gatekeeper, and the person that opens the gate didn't have a clue. This person like came from a galaxy far, far away and opened up this gate. So it's like these kind of things that were happening along the way were really and truly extraordinarily exciting and rewarding. That we were not doing this in a vacuum. We were not doing this and nobody cared. So so that would be the kind of examples of what can happen. And to me, that's like the number one example, because it happens so, you know, 1, 2. Okay, okay. With our displays and our displays that we had, we wanted to go to as many places as possible that we could exhibit it. So one of the things we went to, or one of the things that I particularly went to, was I went to a Juneteenth celebration over in Paramore, and had the displays and had it out so for people to, you know, and would come over, and we always had to come over and talk about it. Any kind of thing that they wanted to, messages that they wanted to write and leave, and you know, kinds of information like that, and really have it be a discussion. We made a triptych of things we had, which now the History Museum has it and likes it the best. The most ugliest thing that we did, they're going, but that's how it's supposed to be. That's what grassroots are and everything. So they were all excited on having that as a thing. And we also went to Zora Neale Hurston Festival for 2 years in a row, and we always had sign-up sheets about if you want to join us and come to it and everything like that. So we had a lot of fun going around, and then it began to be that like black families have family reunions. And so one family contacted us about would we come to their family reunion and bring the displays, and they would talk about the story and everything, and we did. And the person in their family who had actually been a kid and had run through the swamp and everything to get to Apopka stood up and did his testimony for his story. And so there we were in the bosom of the family, and this is where we wanted to be, and this is the kind of thing that we wanted to do, and so that was happening. We had, well, it'll come back to me because I'm kind of forgetting. And I told about the last thing about going to Emory. The other things will show up, I'm sorry.
All right. Can you tell us a little about your reflections on the Ocoee massacre, and in addition to what you've been doing, what kind of efforts have been made to right the injustice, and what else do you think can be done?
Oh, okay. Okay. Probably into this, probably like for a third year, perhaps. Oh, the city of Ocoee was so upset that they could not control us, that they formed the West Orange Reconciliation Task Force. So they had their track, and they were going to do their thing because they couldn't shut us up, and so they started doing that thing. So it was about 3 years in that they decided, or that they actually had Perry's name. They put the tombstone on his grave, and we went to it. So both groups went to this ceremony, and then after we went back to Ocoee in the Methodist Church and had lunch and opened up for a diet talking about what happened. So what I saw with that is I saw black people with dignity and speaking their truth without judgment or blame. They were just telling what happened, and they would stand up and they would say this, and they would say this to the whole entire room. When we started, the office holders in Ocoee were all united on, no. And by the time that time had come along, there were people that were office holders or part of the trustees of the board or whatever, that had recently moved there, were white, and didn't know, and hadn't known anything about this. And we were talking about the way of this is a way of coming together. And what I could see was, for me, I could see their really wanting to stretch the hand across that vast abyss and make a connection. So for me, that was like a really important step, that Ocoee might have been so firmly locked into the wonderful Confederate past. And now, because they'd annexed other properties around them to get to be bigger, so they have a bigger business group, then it was the people that were in office really wanted this connection to happen. And that's really what Ocoee needed in order to be able to attract businesses also, is to get rid of this stigma of doing what's called white capping. White capping is when the Klan is absolutely able to run every single black person out of the town and declare it a sundown town and put signs up. And for Florida, it was either the second white capping or the first or second white capping that was done in Florida only, maybe, or I don't know, of all the country. They were very proud of the fact that they had white capped. And how they white capped was burning houses, shooting people as they're trying to escape their houses, and called in veterans from the First World War, bring your arms and come, and that was, that's what they did. And they just thought that it was the right thing and the good thing to do. I lost track with you. Where did I kind of
That was good. What do you think can be done in addition to the efforts that have already been made to kind of right the injustice?
Okay, yeah. I wanted to tell you about the play, The Whirlwind Passes, because this feeds into it. So with the grant that we had, it was enough. I think it was $8,000. It was enough money, and so the Orlando Black Essential Theater, active in Orlando at that time, and so we gave them $2,000 with no strings attached to be who would be putting on the play. And so, and the play, and we were also, the play was going to happen in many different kinds of venues, but it was really going to go out as yet another place where because we always had dialogue afterwards, we always had a talk back afterwards, and so this would be a place of having those conversations happen. And so what we did there also was to have the newsprint and have people write down, what do you think Ocoee should do? What are your suggestions? Well, also what we did on that was on the seats that people were going to be, on those seats, we had a name of a person that had been disappeared from Ocoee, all these names. And what we said to the people is, this is your name, okay? Find out what happened to this person. This is your name, kind of thing. And then the stuff that we had about what can you do, what should you do for the people of Ocoee, I believe what we did with those was to offer them to West Orange Reconciliation Task Force as some suggestions.
Well, we appreciate you sharing your story with us today. That's all of my questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah. Me personally, I know this is something that Trump has used, but I used it way before him. It's like being with Black people in that close of a context, I fell in love. And I guess it was the part about being white and not wanting to be a racist and not knowing how to do this, because I really was kind of at a loss. And it was the part about there was a workshop that black women were doing, a workshop of empowerment for young Black women coming through, and what they particularly wanted was they wanted white people to be the minions that were there. They wanted to have the visual of it's the white people that are doing all the things that usually Black people do, and so I volunteered for that. And what I saw for my first time was what they were doing was exactly like the kinds of things that I went to, okay? And it was like I could see the separate but equal thing about how, hey, these are middle-class people like me, and they're doing the same kind of things that I do, which tells you how much you can grow up. I grew up in it was only 5% Black people in Massachusetts, and there was no reason to have any kind of real have to put them in a bad place. But I think it's like I figured out that it's like from reading newspapers and believing what I would read, or on television believe what I would see, that I had already had in me this whole entire categorizing of Black people. And so I saw that au contraire, they're not lesser than in any kind of a way. And because it was women, I thought, oh my God, we are now over 50% of the population. If we two came together, we really and truly could change the world, honestly. So that's the place I came with that, and that was before Democracy Forum even ever happened. Okay? So when I went to Chicago, when I was 65, I was gone from Orlando for 6 years because I was sowing my senior wild oats. And so when I was in Chicago, and riding the train like into the city, I always took the red line because the red line, it's the south side of Chicago, I always took the red line because the red line had mostly black people. And I was living in a white, and I was living in a white only place, you know, that happened from white flight. And so it was that's how much it changed me in wanting to hang out with people that I had originally had them, you know, stuffed into a box of this is how they are and this is the way and you should be afraid and all that kind of stuff. When the Black Panthers were active, I sent money to the Black Panthers because I knew how they worked in their community and things that they did. And I really thought, if I sent them money, it's very possible that they could, you know, take over the country. And so I would probably die because I'm white. But I'm so mad at what's going on that I'm sending them the money anyway. So this is what happened back with the Black Panthers. And I go to now, all the people that vote for Trump, I think they were probably coming from the same kind of a place that I was coming, that part. So I kind of understood why people would feel that way. And I just hope if that's true, then maybe the people that feel that way are going to go, you know what, he's not doing it, he's not making a difference. Okay. I'd like to tell one other thing about me. It doesn't have anything to do specifically with black people, but it has a lot to do with the relationships, interacting with people. And that is that I lived for 3 years as a 24/7 volunteer at a no-kill dog shelter / retreat center. And what I learned I learned a lot of things from the dogs of ways of having interactions with people, of how to behave. When a new dog came, the dogs that got along together were not kenneled at all. They just roamed free. It was 140 acres of woods and meadow and creek. And those dogs would choose who their person was. We each had a little cabin and we had one light bulb and we had privies and outdoor showers. So the dogs would choose who their person was, and that's where they would come to sleep at night. Okay. When a new dog came, there would always be different dogs hanging around at the top of the hill or whatever. They would just sit. They would not look at the dog. They would just sit and be calm and still like this, and let the new person come around and smell them all and get acquainted, and things like that. There was a place where the grass was mowed, this big thing, and the dogs would play tag by doing, I don't know if you ever played flinch with your brothers or anything, but doing like that, and they'd be chasing each other, so I saw them playing tag. And I saw how, and the first night that I was there was a dog that stayed, and the dogs would sleep all over the bed. And so the dog stayed, and I woke up in the morning, and I'm hearing this breathing, and I'm thinking, how did I first think, oh my God, there's a person there. And then I turned and I realized it was a dog. And so it was breathing the same way as me, and I went, oh, we're mammals. So that's the way I learn and put things together. And now what I am is a pet sitter, because I could communicate with dogs any kind of a language. And I do this with family and friends, and they tell me what the schedule is of how the dog's day is, what goes along, and I do that. And the dog kind of teaches me up as to what I'm expected to do for the dog. And I love them, and they love me, and the people that love the dogs love them because there's somebody that loves them as much as they do. And I always know that they're going to be wonderful because they're raised and loved by their parents. So I just wanted to share that as the place. When I came back from my 6 years of sowing my wild oats, this is what I came back with. That's it.
That's great. Thanks for sharing with us.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right.
I hope you really do take out the places where, I suppose maybe it's fun for other people, if they start forgetting to see somebody that can't remember and loses track, so maybe that's a good thing.
Well, thanks again. This has been Jeffrey Crivero. with Connie Lester and Sandy Cawthern at the Downtown Public Library in Orlando, Florida, on Thursday, May the 23rd, 2019.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.